his faculties were there, and then you understood at some point. He's like, okay, like they're showing the numbers. The faculties aren't there. You just have to step in and make sure you have the buy-in from your family. Like at the end of the day, you don't want to be the bad guy, but it's like sometimes you have to make the decisions which are uncomfortable. But if you're going to lose the house because you're going to go bankrupt, that's not an option, right? You might as well sell it. Well, the one thing I would say to if you're having kids, start talking about money right away.
Welcome back, everybody, for a brand new episode of the DC Talks podcast. I'm your gracious host, Owen Osinde. We're DC in the building today, and we are discussing downsizing. A lot of people are reaching that point in their age where it's time to scale down. The house is too big. But what do? Do you give it to your kids? What happens when you give it to your kids? When people get involved, your parents get sick, all the legal stuff that happens within there, we got to find out what to do so you can be prepared when this happens. DC, how you doing, buddy?
It's always a hard stretch.
Exactly.
Isaac has us on opposite ends of the table here.
Mm-hmm. But to kick things off, how often do you see this come up? People who are looking to downsize and they could potentially lose a lot of money and kids get involved. What are the ramifications when your parents are getting older and you can decide what to do with their house?
I've seen a lot of times the kids will just take control. They'll exercise their POAs, the power of attorneys, and then just get it done. I don't think they're losing money. I think they see the potential. One thing you have to be careful with the power of attorney with your kids, especially if one is not good with money. You know, they might be forcing you out of a house faster than you anticipated, right? Like it's a reality we're seeing here. And it's, again, most my clients fortunately haven't been like that. One of the clients we sold last year on Guinness, they were a power of attorney. The mother was more of incapacitated. Like she just couldn't live in the home anymore. So they had to put her home. And it's like then the family members got together and they had one son was the power of attorney. And then all the other siblings were involved, right? So, but we have seen situations where you have to be careful. Right? You have to be careful. There's one sibling will manipulate the other siblings. There's another situation which there was in a house that the father lived in the home and then the daughter came move in, but she manipulated him and wouldn't let him sell the house even though he needed the money. And because her kids had moved in, she's like, well, where am I going to go? Then the brother had to get involved and stuff too. And then they were trying to do legal stuff. And then this was the father was still alive and then he passes away. So now they have to go through probate. So she got her wish to kind of prolong. They missed the market a little bit. So now they probably can't sell. But you also see that was the opposite situation. They needed the money to pay for things and she was squatting because you can't, technically she's like a tenant. Yeah. You can't kick her out. And I think she might've also had power of attorney as well. So yeah, like I've seen weird situations, my friend. It's not good, right?
Who decides who's going to become power attorney? Is it by age? Is it by
you pick them? You pick them.
So the siblings pick them, or
no?
The parents?
The person so we're going through things right now. My mom and I were discussing now. Like as you know, my dad passed away 10 years ago. His will was different. So my mom, we're setting up the corporation through Jason. We're trying to figure out, and he said, okay, we have to come up with scenarios. Okay, there's the three brothers. So like, does one of us have overriding power? This happened. My uncles did the same thing when they own properties together. And there's like three sisters, right? And two of the three sisters have to agree in order to dispose of a property, for example, if anything's going to be moved. You want to so that's the agreement you have. It could be any kind of situation. So my mother and our situation, our brothers, same thing. Like we have to have, I think 2 or 3 of us override, and then it'd be okay. So you can set things like that. Or if there's one sibling which is more involved and the other ones are not, I've seen that where, like I said, with my client last year, there was 4 siblings. Only one of them was really involved. And he had the power of attorney. So he had the last say. He obviously wanted, he wanted to keep a good relationship with this family. So he made sure, that everyone was happy about it. But in reality, that person could have done whatever they wanted with the power. Relatively, with their intention, if they can do that, they can dispose of a property if they have the power of attorney. Yeah. Now, there's other different ways of doing power of attorneys, right? So the way that this power of attorney was set up, it was 2 people had to agree. Like the lawyer was also on, and the son was on. And the way that the law was written, they both had to agree, right? So that's what I'm saying. But there's other situation where you can also have a power of attorney where only one of them has to agree. So in this kind of situation, the lawyer actually passed away. So we had to get the death certificate show, okay, it's only the son on this kind of
Yeah.
situation. But yeah, when you're setting it up, like the wills on that, yeah, you're able. It's not. There's no rules really. Essentially, you're relying on your advisor, whether it's your financial planner, your lawyer, etc., to give you the best advice in order how and what scenarios arise, right? It's the same thing like, if you do not resuscitate kind of situations. So you want to go through all the scenarios. There are uncomfortable uncomfortable conversations, but it's better to have them now than not know what to do in the future in case something happens or when something happens.
Yeah. How do you deal with the guilt? Let's say the parents are feeling as if you're trying to take advantage of them because they'll be like, oh, you're trying to take us out of our house because you as the kid.
Me as an agent? Or like,
No,
no, because it's not me. It's definitely not me.
The family, they're like trying to plan ahead. They're thinking of their parents, but the parents feel like we've been here for 40 plus years and you're trying to kick us out and move us into a home and you're working with them. What is some of the advice that you're giving to, let's say, the children?
Well, if the parents don't want to go, they still have, if they have their own
like the mental capacity.
If they have their own capacities, it's their house.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You can't move them out, right? If they don't have their mental capacities and they just can't afford to be there, then it's like, okay, then it's a different situation. So if you're talking a situation where the parents don't want to move and they don't have all their faculties, then we have to be realistic. We talk with the kids and we say, well, what's the best scenario for them? What's going to happen, right? This also happened in one of our situations where they couldn't afford the condo. The mother had passed away and they couldn't afford the condo for much longer. We're trying to get him into a home and he was refusing. Finally got him to the home. Eventually he passed away in the home. It wasn't even that much longer. It was almost a year to the date that the wife passed away. But it was one of those situations where he was fighting them until we trying to explain. The daughter is trying to explain, like, Dad, you can't afford this. We're going to be losing this. Like you can't afford this, especially without mom's pension now, right? They're not comfortable situations, but his faculties were there, and then you understood. At some point, he's like, okay, and they're showing the numbers. They couldn't be there. If the faculties aren't there, you just have to step in and figure out what's the financial. Make sure you have the buy-in from your family. Like at the end of the day, you don't want to be the bad guy, but it's like sometimes you have to make the decisions which are uncomfortable. But if you're going to lose the house because you're going to go bankrupt, that's not an option, right? You might as well sell it, right, and try to capture some of the market because you try to capture the money before it goes on bankruptcy.
What are some of like the tools, not tools, but like the documents that if you, for example, like me, my parents are getting older, right? I have two other sisters. My parents own two properties, one in Sarnia, one in London. It's like a rental. And let's say my mom wants to move back to Kenya. My dad as well is going to move back. What do we need to have as they're getting older?
You can be put on title.
You can put on title?
Yeah.
Is there like a cost being put on title?
Yeah. I think there's I know from parents to children, there may not be a land transfer tax trigger. That's something you'd have to talk with your lawyer. But I've seen before family members being added, especially like you and your sister would probably be a good idea. And, then especially with your parents. And nowadays, a lot of times electronically you can sign, your parents can sign when they're in Kenya, but if anything happens to them, like you can do depending on what you can do joint tenancy. In the past, I knew you might not have been able to do joint tenancy. I don't know if that has changed or not. So joint tenancy is about survivorship, right? Where the members, whoever's on title owns 100% of the property. It doesn't get split 50-50, right? So for example, my wife and I were joint tenancy. We both own the property 100%. One of us passes away. The other person still owns the property 100%, right? That's joint tenancy.
It's by default.
Right, by default. It's called survivorship.
Okay.
Right? So for example, it's you, so say it's your mom, you and your sister, right? If your mom passes away, well, you and your sister still share 100%. Right now, all three of you share 100%. And then if you continue to hold on to it, then it's like survival of the fittest and the person passes away. Whoever's last to hold it holds the ring. But, if you're holding it for a long period of time, right? But that's how joint tenancy works. The caveat to that was that when you're purchasing the property, this is what we learned in real estate school, you have to have the same intention and you both have to purchase the property at the same time in order to qualify for joint tenancy. The way it was in the past, you couldn't come in afterwards and have joint tenancy. Now, my mom's cousin had passed away. He owned a house before he was married. And the wife was asking me, like, he was sick for like the last 30 years almost, right? And great man. We lost him earlier this year or the end of last year. And I remember talking to her, she's like, What happens? I'm like, you're probably tenants in common, so you might have to go through probate if you pass away. So the difference is because he'd owned the property first. But when I checked the title and I talked to my lawyer, and she's like, no, they're joint tenancy. I'm like, I thought you had to come in after. I thought you couldn't come in afterwards. So that's kind of made me question. I was like, okay, well, maybe you're maybe still eligible to be joint tenancy in that kind of situation where there is survivorship. So heaven forbid your mom moves back to Kenya, your parents move back to Kenya, and something happens to them and they're not, like, when they pass away, well, then you and your sister will take over title. There's no, because you do it now, so there's no will needed in that kind of situation. If you sell, you all have to sign on it.
Yeah.
We just put everybody's name on it. Again, you can do electronic signatures, that's fine. But if there's something happens, somebody passed away, then that's a way of making sure that you don't have to pay probate taxes on the person that has passed away and pay for their proportional share of the taxes to be transferred to your name.
Yeah, because like right now, like one of the houses we do have, I think there's like only like 100K left in the mortgage around there. Like it's nothing crazy. So my mom's like talking about like, hey, like, you can buy it from us, or you and your sisters can come together. And this is what I was telling you about, like the whole building a garden suite in the back, because we have such a big backyard that if we extend that even further and make like another unit in the back, we can. The property is amazing. Like the land that it sits on it's insane. So she's planning ahead for that. So her and I were just having like a long talk last Sunday. He's like, yeah, like what are we gonna do with this? Because she's building another property back in Mombasa where she can like settle in like a little compound with her friends as they get older, because she wants to remain. I think the key to having a long life is having people you love around you. There's even like a study that shows that people
Or being very bitter. Some of the bitterest people in the world live long too, right? That's true. It's like the
grumpy
it's
cat.
either it's women, like, in their night, like live sometimes, like they're the ones that are scorned for some reason. They're filled with piss and vinegar, I guess they've been saying.
I don't know what keeps them up, like staying strong like that. But there was like a book I read, The Happiness Advantage, which was talking about the people who live the longest are the ones who have a lot of social friends. Because I don't know what it is. It's not health. People think people die because of bad health. They die because of sickness. It's not that. People die because they're lonely, right? So she knows, she's planning ahead for that. So she's making they're going to buy like a house. They're going to build a house here. They're going to have like a common area. They can come enjoy dinners and everything like that. It's pretty cute. Like I was like, yo, wow, salute to you for thinking like that. So we're just trying to plan now, because like they're going to downsize eventually in the next like 15 years. So we got to get ready for that. Right. And I don't want to get into a battle with my family, like who gets who, what gets what. It gets,
messy. It gets messy.
It gets super messy.
I know, because we have these conversations all the time, right? And so I'd ask, like, so in our personal situation, with my dad had bought a bunch of commercial properties, and we had to dispose of. So since he's passed for 10 years, we've disposed of, I think, 3 of the commercial properties that we pretty much had no choice. One of them, they're going to be building a condo, and it's like either you're with us or you're out there. So we actually got a good price. We got more than he wanted. Before my dad passed away, he tried to sell a whole bunch of the properties, and the ones I sold, I actually got almost double what he was getting. So my mom was happy, but again, we kind of were forced some of them, right? Oh, another one was a residential home, which made good money, and which was sold not too far from here. And the other one was another commercial property down the road. Same thing happened. The next door neighbors got together. So they're going to be doing like an assembly, which means to get a number of community, like a number of properties together, and they can build a condo. At one point, they needed us, and now they had enough density that they didn't need us anymore to build. So we're kind of at their mercy. And during COVID, we lost 2 of our anchor tenants, so we were bleeding money. So it was we were at a situation where we had to say to them, it's like, so I talked to my mom. I said, listen, we're at a situation now. If we talk to the neighbor, they can get probably a bigger project if they buy our property. So they'd be interested in that one, but you're not going to get top dollar as top of dollar that we wanted to get. We almost got really top dollar. Somebody had purchased us for a high amount, and we're not going to get that. I told her this, but I'm like, but the caveat to that is that if you don't sell to these guys, and right now you're bleeding money from this property, if you sell now, you're going to have to sell your property based on cost of capital. Cost of capital means you take your income from the tenants, subtract your expenses, you get your net operating income. So that's what we use. So we try to normalize it across different investors. So you don't include expenses for your mortgages. Because, for example, Isaac can come in and purchase a property for cash. You can come in and have a mortgage. So we try to normalize it across. So we try to get you a cap rate, right? And so you take this net operating income and you divide it by this cap rate. Cap rate is pretty much what the return you want to see in your money, 6-7%. And you come on the number. Well, this cost of capital, the cap rate, is going to be far less than if you sold to a developer that is pricing your land based on density and what they can build on it, right? It was almost double from us. So I said, you're at a position right now, I'm sure you're not going to get X amount of dollars. You'll probably get $1 million less. And I'll negotiate. I got $1 million less than her, but I'm like, but it was almost double than if you sold it based on retail the way it is right now, especially because you have no income coming in.
Yeah. And
it's probably even less than that. Yeah. So so I priced it, when you do cost of capital, you price it at capacity, right? When it's full, when it's up and running, how much is actually the future value of it. But I said, but also right now you're in a deficit because you have no cash flow. So are you going to be able to get those anchor tenants in there? And then we don't need to sell, but that house, that unit will always be a retail store. You can no longer sell to a developer if they develop beside you, because the other side also will sell to a developer. So it would be 2 condos beside a freestanding building, and you're basically cost of capital at that point. So you have to make a decision now. You're losing money. Like, sure, you get $1 million, but when my dad passed away, we got a fax saying that they didn't want to go forth with the deal that he had made. I made double what he made within 7 years after his passing. Forgot. So I think he'd be happy with me.
he's down looking at you guys proud.
But my point to that was, this was one of the situations where I said to my brothers, I'm like, my brothers are okay because their hands are not involved. It's me and my mom. We're talking about it, and my parents and my brothers ask them, like, reason why we had the disposals, here's what it is. We got it. And like, if they're worried about their own money, I'm like, I got you double what dad got us in here too, but it goes into the fund, because afterwards, if mom passed away, she can only have a certain amount of money, right? And it's like, we are structuring it that you will get the benefits of this. Now, my mom doesn't want to be a landlord, and I don't know if she listens to my podcast or not, and I think she wants to be happy. So one by one, I said to her, I've targeted 3 of the buildings which are still in their portfolio, which I want to buy, and I don't want to flip them, because my dad also wanted to carry on a legacy. So I've approached my brothers. They're not going to buy them. I said, well, I will buy them, so you will get the benefit of the cash. The money goes into the fund, and upon my mom's passing, all the stuff, like it will be distributed like how it should be, right? So we are setting it up like, but if you don't want to tap into it, you don't have to tap it. Long story short, it goes into the fund. We're setting up. But the communication with my brothers, I'm like, did you want any of these properties? And they don't want them. So I'm like, I do, and I want to keep dad's legacy. So I want to pass on to my kids. So I'll probably set up in a corporation where my kids will sell it. It's supposed to be not sold. It's supposed to stay in the family. And I don't want to go too big. The 3 properties, one of them which we're standing in here. This is one of them. This is my dad's first property, commercial one that he had, especially in Bloor Street, bought in the early 80s. When I told my mom I want to buy it, she loved it. It's going to stay in our family. It was a way to carry dad's life. Like, you get the added benefit, and the brothers will get the benefit from the money that I am paying and above market value. Trust me, I don't get a discount on, which is because it's our family, but it honors me as well, right? So how do you keep peace in the family? It's like, well, you're, without selling it to a stranger, I'm buying it now, and then you're going to get also on top of the money, but hopefully mom's going to live for another, let's say 20 years, like she'll be 75, she lives to 95, and maybe 25 years. The money that I'm paying for you guys now will grow because it's going to be in funds, and it's going to earn cash.
And you have access to that fund as well, even though you bought the property, or is it
no?
Just
Well,
because you're
we all will share 1/3 of it. Like the 3 brothers will share of it afterwards. So yes, I'm paying into something. That's when my mom laughs. She goes, "You're paying into something you're also going to get benefit for." I'm like, well, I prefer the property, right? But that's why I'm also paying market value for it. I'm not paying below market value,
even though you're family.
Right, but you pay into it to get it back later on. But I'm not looking I'm just paying market value, and that's what we had to have. And the other thing we did to make sure everything was in the up and up, plus in the eyes of the CRA, we had to do an appraisal on the property. So the appraisal came in, and it was like pretty much, and we compared it to one of the sales in the neighborhood, and I was like, yeah, the number he came in, that's what we're paying. Right? I don't have to pay real estate fees, so obviously, so there'll be a spreadsheet on knock that, but. Anyway, this is kind of the conversations you have with your family. Okay, if you don't want to have access, like the only problem is you put it in writing and stuff too. So you don't want your family to come back and say, you never offered that to us. And it's like any transaction. When it comes to money, be careful with your family members, because their true nature comes out when money comes out, especially after a death in the family.
It's a lot of, especially if it's a lot of money as well too.
Yeah. And especially if you're somebody, and like, think on my brothers aren't too bad like this. They're not bad at all, actually. But you hear of some siblings that are like kind of down on their money, and as soon as somebody dies, like they're right there.
Yeah,
and it's like, they're like hawks, you know, it's disgusting. Disgusting. I've heard of so many people be that way. Thank God our family's not like that. We all relatively get along. Like, you know, we're siblings. My brothers fight all the time, you know. My middle brother, which I love, like I love both of my brothers, but my middle brother doesn't hang out with us as often, so it's kind of sad, you know. Like I miss him, but it's
how often do you see him? Like in a year?
Maybe 3-4 times a year.
Like the special holidays and events?
Yeah. Like, or go see his son play hockey. I'll make links to that. Or I went to the university to do like a podcast. So I went and saw him there. Like, he's a professor at Laurier. And I miss my brother. I love my brother. We were tight. Like, I would say we're tight like brothers. No, we were tight. We did everything together, right? So it's kind of sad, but he's been there since like 1995, right? So yeah. But it doesn't mean we're just not as close as we were.
He's in the city too?
He's in Waterloo.
It's Waterloo. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's like what you did there with the corporation, setting that up and protecting the assets. I think that's a key strategy.
We're still not there. It's been 10 years, right? So my dad had left things in such a disarray that like Jason's been going through and fixing up. So it's better to set up right now. Sure, you have to pay, like, so even if you have to like house and put land transfer tax now and figure out, it's better to do it now, and then before it gets too big, and then you have to redo it again anyway, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're in right now. Like, that's why not all of it's been taken care of, because we've been pulling, because we were going to do everything all at once into one big corporation. But then when I decided, I'm like, we moved into here. I'm like, I want to buy this one. And I talked to the brothers, can I buy this one? Can I buy this one? They're like, we don't care. Like, go ahead.
How come, you know, with this many assets that your dad left behind, how come there isn't much of an interest? Because your brother's a professor. He knows that, okay, this thing's going to go up in value.
But he's not into real estate.
Okay.
And my oldest brother, like, you know, he was born with spina bifida, but that's not, he runs a salon. He doesn't have interest and wouldn't know how to run. They both don't know run properties like we do. So they're not interested into the real estate aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Right. So they say, do you want? He goes, well, I'm not going to run. First of all, my brother in Waterloo, he's like, I'm not coming to Toronto to be a landlord and to get a property manager. He just has no interest on it, especially if you're getting the benefit of the fund anyway. What's the difference, right?
Yeah, like that's what you're working towards, right, anyway. Exactly. So what's the point of dealing with the stress?
So yeah, I understand. Like I'm saying, would you prefer the money? And that's like, that's, you know, those are conversations. And I told them, like, you know, I'm buying these two, and like whatever. It's going to take some while to buy all three. I'm not buying all three all at once. I want to set up the corp and make sure everything works, and then one by one you buy them, right? You don't, and you all have their own names. It takes some time. It takes some money to do that as well.
And these are separate corps from like the DC corp.
What I've heard, the best idea to do is you have one umbrella and you have like a holding company,
like a subsidiary of different,
right? And then each company, each building, you can have under its own corporation. I've seen people do before, as opposed to putting them all three buildings into one corporation. Each one has its own, and then they all pay a holding company.
And then like they have separate tax, separate costs, and everything.
Everything's
like
separate. Yeah.
I've actually been thinking about that as well too. Like, you know, how do you set up like a major company, and then if you have like a brand for this and you have a brand for that, you want to keep things separate.
Well, even like when my clients, the Revolver Pizza, like we've talked about them a number of times, every time they open up a new shop has a new corporation. And well, why do you do that? He goes, it's easy to track our expenses and our income. If we put it all together, we don't know which facility is doing better than the other.
Yeah.
So this way we know if we need to act. If one isn't acting, we can, you know, like if there's a problem child, it's easier to identify. And if there's one that's soaring, like unbelievably, like a rock star, you also can identify it. So it doesn't just involve in buildings as well. It also can be with businesses, which, you know, you own. So it's a very smart way of doing it. Sure, it costs you a little bit more money to set up, and you just do a numbered company. You don't have to, you know, like an Ontario Limited, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Ontario Limited. It's fine. You don't need, you know, like that's on the books. It'd have its own name, but it'd be like, you know, Owen, Agent 00 working under, you know, the company 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's good. That's smart. I didn't know like you can do that for properties as well too.
Yeah.
Like that's actually, because you think you can just do it for regular business and everything, but real estate is a business. It is part of.
But it's also for survivorship, right? So then with each business, you can have, like, you know, you have a CFO and have like, you know, your president, all that stuff. And then they're like, you know, they can all pull from there too. So it's almost like you have employees through that company, right?
And you
And not own the company. They go just, but they can get paid out.
So you're gonna put because I think you talking about survivorship. You're gonna put your daughters as part of like
Probably.
directors of these corps, so
Yeah.
they can benefit like when they have kids as well too. Like it just
Well, exactly. It's all about survivorship, right? And it's about, if I want to keep this company in its name, I'm not going to be here forever. I want to pass it on to my kids, but I will also put in there, like, so yeah, I would 100% set them up in there as well. And that I would also put in there too. Look, I'm buying this property because I don't want you to sell it, right? Unless, and I'll put a caveat, and unless you're in the situation where we had, where they're knocking down the whole block to build something else bigger. You don't want to be like that one in Europe where there's that little house and all these skyscrapers around it.
Yeah.
Well, then that has no value, that house anymore, right? It's just, that would might be my only caveat of what if you're able to sell. But if it's just to sell for the sake of selling as you need the money, no, you're not allowed to do that. We're gifting this to you. Like, figure out how to make it work.
It'll be a slap in the face when you give someone something and then they sell it. And you're like, come on, man.
Yeah.
That's kind of in bad taste.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Anyways, Rishi, thanks for sharing that insight into everything. This is a great learning lesson for me as well too, moving forward, what to do. Because I think I see that property that we have as like the first building block for me. Like I'm even helping my mom with tenants and repairs and everything like that. Because kind of like what you did here, I'm using that as like a learning tool of like what it's like to be a landlord, and use that build equity while like buy my own property as well too. I can just continue stacking up over like the next decade after decade after decade. But it takes a small project to like start the entire thing rolling. And I'm fortunate that my mom is bringing me in. And I know my other sisters in Australia, but Keturah and I, like, she's super smart too. Like Keturah, genius. She's like high honor roll UFT, like 90 something average, like 2 degrees at once. She's a genius.
I saw, just for your audience, I met his sister a few days ago. It was about 3 or 4 days ago. What a gem.
What a
Your
gem.
family, like honestly, her and her fiance, amazing people.
Yeah.
And but the reason why I say that to you guys, it's like, it's always a reflection with your family, because I know you, right? And it was funny when I met your sister, I'm like, we got along right away. And I can just see how you and your family are. So I also can see, like, you probably like have conversations with your family when it talks about these properties. It won't be an issue, right? But the problem is if you try to hide things, and if you're being selfish about it, well, then you'll get buried. If somebody's smart as your sister will see right through that, right? So my advice for you is like, be open and honest. Like, what do you want to accomplish here? What do we want to do with this? Because again, like, you want to make sure everyone's on the same plane, everybody understands. And if there's a situation where there's some conflict, go through the conflict now. Put it on paper, figure this shit out now.
Yeah, people hate having hard conversations.
I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't had hard conversations every day.
Yeah. But the thing is, that's the key to actually moving forward, is like, let's talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't want to call my mom because it's like, I got to tell her something. But the more you prolong it, the more it gets even more challenging, because you're like, you could have told me this earlier, like, what's up? And sometimes I just don't like conflict. I'm I'm not confrontational. Like, I just like actually having a conversation.
Yeah.
But if I feel the conversation's gonna be confrontational, I take time to actually be strategic about it.
Right.
So, but hard conversations are needed, especially when money's involved too. But it's actually, you have to start having them early than when disaster strikes and you're left with the mess in front of you.
Well, the one thing I would say, if you're having kids, start talking about money right away. Don't let them. A friend of ours, she had like, her kids were using her own card. I'm like, they didn't realize that the debit card just kind of, it was like an open ATM at all times. Like, no, like, with our kids, we set them up with their own debit cards. I'm like, if we go to the mall, although yesterday I bought them something from the mall, but that's just different. That's because they're my daughters and I like buying them gifts. But no, like, we set them up with their own debit cards, and they go off and they buy their own stuff, and they know how to budget money, right? And then in the beginning, when they were younger, we'd go to the mall and they'd be like, can I have this? Can I have that? And I'm like, and they're just like, well, no, like, they didn't understand why they just couldn't have what they couldn't have. And then when they started realizing what the price things were, I'm like, okay, you want a bubble tea?
You feel the pain.
Right. You want a bubble tea? Well, you use your card. Dad, that's expensive, right? I'm like,
Duh.
Like, why do you think we'd like to say no to you? Like, bubble teas are freaking expensive, right? And it's like every time, if you want 2 of them, and then you're also not going to throw them away, right? So you're going to finish those things. And guess what? If you're paying for yourself, maybe you don't get the extra large. Maybe you only get a small because it's like I only want that much.
It's like
right?
eating wings. The way people eat wings, they just kind of nibble
Don't
the middle.
ask. Oh, I drives
and
me
they
nuts.
toss that to the
My
side.
mom used to get so pissed.
like, yo,
we were taught to like suck the
Suck the bone dry.
God.
Get the marrow out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When I
man.
moved to Canada, like I remember like we're eating lunch. There's a grade 3, and this guy got pizza wings, and he's like eating the wings, and I'm like, Ryan, are you not? You're done your wings? And I'm like, he's like, yeah, man, like the wings are done. And I'm like, there's still meat here. There's still meat there. There's right there. It's like, yeah, don't eat that part. Just eat the middle. And
Oh my God.
I remember going back home that day, and I'm like, yo, is this how Canadians?
No.
Just
Well,
like-
European parents would not let
they
that,
just
not let that fly.
nibble the middle and toss the rest of the bone? It was a waste of meat. I'm telling you.
Yeah. No. That ain't happening.
It's not happening. DC, as we work towards wrapping up, give us 3 practical pieces of advice for people with aging parents. And there's downsizing coming up within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
What are some of the 3 things that they should be doing?
So the first thing is get together with your siblings and see, like, get a plan together, right? So that's the first thing. What do we want to see? What happens? And go through scenarios. Have the hard conversation would be the first one I would do with them. Then if your parents aren't involved, I would also get them involved and see what they're being like, see what their physical aspects, and just, you have to go through scenarios with them. That's the first and foremost. Once you have a plan with your family, sit down and talk with an accountant and your lawyer, because those ones also say, like, if they want to stay in the property, how long is it going to be? Like the accountant should have some numbers for you as well. And the lawyer, in case they need to draft any, like a power of attorney situation, and go through scenarios with them as well. So those are 2 very big things. The third thing I would also be is, like, try to, like, get your emotions out of it. I was just, honestly, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And once you put your emotions aside, talk with a realtor about, and just keep them on the finger on the pulse and say what's happening in case we need to sell. What's the market going to be like? So you're not making an emotional decision, knee-jerk reaction on it too. You're making a strategic thing. So based on what the market conditions could be, is it beneficial for your parents to stay or not? So, and if you have the other 2 in line, everybody's in line, they understand what's going on, and keep those 3 things in mind. Yeah. So I would interview and talk with realtors right away, and just try to figure out who has their finger on the pulse in the market and what's happening, and what's a realistic value in today. And then moving forward, what is a value, and how could you help us? What is your marketing to help us sell that and figure that out? So those are 3 major things I would do.
Thanks for that. Again, hope you enjoyed that episode. If you have any questions, all the details will be in the description to either message us or email David. And don't forget to like this video. It really helps a lot in other people discovering it. Also, share your comments, what you think about downsizing. If you have any pressing questions, leave them in the comments. And I will see you next week for a brand new episode. And talk to you soon. Ciao.